Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We are very happy to welcome you guys back to the channel. This is 2026 and I'm very happy to see you all in 2026. In this 2026, we have a lot coming in this YouTube channel. We're going to learn a lot about .NET, Azure, and anything related to software development. And we are back. This is our first video where we are going to look into .NET 10. So if you are a beginner, don't worry. This video, by the end of the video, you'll be able to build your first API with .NET. So if you have experience already, this video is also for you. You will learn a lot of best practices that you need to use to build your .NET API. Welcome, and I'm very happy to have you here. And we have a lot coming in, and we need your support. We want you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and not just to subscribe, share this content with others as well. And there is a lot coming in. And if you have a suggestion, a video or content that you want us to do video about, you can always drop that one in the comment section and we will work on that for you. So welcome, and this is .NET 10. We're going to learn a lot. And officially, we are using Visual Studio 2026 as well. So everything is new. We have .NET 10, which happens to be the new version of .NET. We have Visual Studio 2026, which happens to be the new version of Visual Studio. So today's video is going to be exciting. We're going to learn, and then we're going to build a awesome, beautiful, nice API that you can also extend your knowledge and add a lot of functionality to it. So welcome and thank you for joining us. So I have my Visual Studio here. If you're a beginner, don't worry, this video is for you. You will learn a lot as well. So when you open your Visual Studio like this, one thing that you need to do is that you go and say you want to create project. And one thing about Visual Studio is that most of these things are inbuilt for you. So you have templates that you can start with. You don't need to, you can use the CLI if you're using Visual Studio Code. But here we have everything. So we go in here and then you see that Visual Studio 2026 was improved. So you can see the performance and how beautiful it's looking right now. It's very, very nice. So we can go and say that we want to create. I already have some project that I was playing around with. So this is a recently project I created, but you might not see this if you have not used Visual Studio. So if you worry about .NET, maybe you have come across this video and you don't know what .NET is all about. Let's also look into .NET before you get started looking into. And then let's see .NET 10. How do you even download this? So I'm going to leave this link in the video description. So you have this link straightforward in here that you'll be able to download this video, this .NET SDK straightforward. And you can use Visual Studio with the C# Dev Kit, or you can use Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code is good, but we are using Visual Studio here, which is 2026. And one thing that we have is also you can build anything with .NET. And there is one thing that we keep on saying, that in era of AI, you can build a lot of artificial intelligence kind of application with .NET. You come here, you can see you build microservices, you build game, you build Internet of Things, mobile, desktop, front end, back end, and data. So anything that you can think of. So this is the new version of .NET. So you come here and then you can also look into it. Even if you want to learn, I can say you click on web, and in here you see that you can create web API, real-time kind of applications and everything here. And then you see the performance. So when you compare .NET with other technology like Node.js, you see that the performance differences here. So it means that .NET is kind of very fast and all that. So that is what you need to do. So you need to download this SDK. This is the first requirement you need. And then you download Visual Studio. So Visual Studio I'll leave the link. It's very easy to download. And yeah, so you download the SDK to verify. You can open your terminal like this right here. So if after downloading everything, this is a simple instruction where you go download, install and everything. You can do .NET SDK, right? So you do .NET list SDK. So this will tell you the SDKs that you have. So if you have .NET 10, you will see that you have .NET 10. So if I go in there, sorry, you see that everything is listed here, right? So you can see .NET 9 is here, .NET 10 is here. So after going through all the installation, this is what you see, right? Okay, good. So let's get back to business right here, where we're going to create. We select .NET Web API because that's the web API we want to create. And where do we want to put it? And here I can choose where I want to put it. This is a directory, so I'm able to select where I want to put everything inside, right? So this is the location. This is the location where I want to put this project in, and yours might be different. So this is a very simple. If you are new here, don't worry. It's just you choosing where you want to place your application. So we're going to go ahead and he say that create. And as I said earlier on, this Visual Studio come with kind of pre-installed template that you need to start with. So it has all these things for us, and you can see this is very, very exciting, right? We're going to look into what is happening in here as well. So you can see this most C# application come with program.cs. We can think of program.cs as the starting point. When the application is start execute, this is where it starts, right? So this is going to be our main entry point, right? So everything passes here before it gets to anywhere. This is what you can think of. So if you are seeing this program.cs, don't worry. Most of this here are just kind of a method that you don't need to know about, right? So it's gonna look into. So anytime that we want something to start, whenever the application start, we probably will bring it here, right? So think of program.cs program.cs as the starting point where everything starts, right? Good. So now, because this is template, right? There was already pre-install kind of something for us, which is weather forecast, right? And we don't want that. We're gonna create our own. So we probably will go ahead and say that we want to delete this weather forecast, right? So I say yes, I wanted to delete, and there is controller, right? And one thing in .NET, which we have another video coming up, is that there are so many ways to create an API with .NET, which is that we are using a controller-based approach, which means that we use controllers. But there is minimal API where you probably have a way to do it, like how you do it with Express and everything. And we have video coming up. We will look into that as well. So let's go ahead and delete this guy as well. Now, we probably don't need this. I want to delete everything so that it won't be confusing, right? Now, we're going to come up with our own application, some kind of a structure. So let's say if you have an architect that you want to use for your project, this is where you're going to use it, right? And this sometimes it depends on what you are using. But in this video, because we are going to start everything from scratch, we're going to use a simple architect, right? So mostly if you have been watching my video, I always have a folder called application domain infrastructure, right? And I'm going to explain the reason why I do that. So I'm going to create application folder right here. So this is application. We think of application as a logic, right? So think of application as a logic where our main business logic will be sitting, right? So this is what we look into. And the next thing we would like to go and look into is domain. Right, so we like to bring our domain also inside, right? So domain, also think of it as entity, anything entity, right? DTOs, we can put it there, but it depends on what you basically work with. You might not basically, so don't worry. Web application one, this is that my project name. I didn't choose a name, don't worry. So we will go and then we're going to do this domain. And then we're going to do infrastructure, right? Where we can think of infrastructure as anything related to database, right? Anything related to database. So Domain is where we put our model. So the model is what we want to save in the database, right? Okay. So let's go into here, and there is another folders that I want to create in, which here I'm going to create this called modules. And then here I'm going to add another thing called DTOs, right? So we'll look into this in a second. So we have model, we have DTOs. Basically, DTOs are what we are going to expose to the user or to the client, right? To the client side of the application. We will look into that as well. But let's go and then also bring something here, which I'll probably call exceptions, right? Exceptions. So exceptions, you can put it in infrastructure though. Remember, this we are not following any production architect, right? We are just coming up with something that will make it easier for us to build this API. So let's look into that as well. So the next thing that I want to go and bring in here is we are done with the infrastructure. So I'm gonna go here to the infrastructure, and then let's create all the necessary folder as well. So we're gonna create what I call configuration in the infrastructure, and I'm going to create context. So I'm going to create context. So this is context, right? And then I'm going to create a folder called data, right? And I'm going to explain why we are creating all these things, right? As we progress, you understand why we are doing it. And our controller, we move our controller to our application. Right, this is it. Now we have all these things setting up. Okay, good. Now, when we talk of model, right, in .NET, or entity, this is what's in the simple terms. We think of this as what we want to save in the database. Let's think of it like, what do we want to save in the database? And that is the model, right? And here I'm going to use example like book API example. Very simple, right? So we're gonna look into this and say that, hey, the first model we want to look into is called book. So this is book. And here we're gonna say that we want something like public, right? So we want to have this entity sitting in, right, in the book. So the properties that we have. So I'm going to have this as kind of GUI IDs. I like GUI IDs. I don't like hint IDs as well. So we're going to have public here, string of title as well. We probably going to look into an author, right? So an author will come in, but for now we do not have the author right here, so we don't want any error to happen, right? We probably also have the description of the book, right? And these things we are doing in the empty, we are just making sure that it's not going to throw burning out, right? And we want to look into something we call date stamp right here. And then we want to go and for the publication date, right? So the publication date, we can look into this. So this is the publication date. We have our description. We have our publication date. One thing we need to do is that we need to go and have the author ID right here. So I'm going to say GUI, the author ID. So don't worry about these things, right? The point is that we need to go and create this, and you will learn about entity framework as well, where entity framework has a way of doing relationship and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create this fast. We're going to say that we need author as well. So to bring an author right here, we're going to say that. So we have the biography. And one thing about this is that we think of this as what we want to store in the database. And as I said, picture this as what we keep in the database. So anytime we make changes here, we're going to do migration, everything. We're going to look into the concept of migration, everything. So let's go ahead and say we're going to do something we call I correction here. And one thing about So because this is what we call navigations, right? What you're saying here is what we call navigation. It means that, hey, a user is going to have, an author is going to have book, right? But author can have a lot of books, right? So you are not going to, so we're going to go into here and say that book also have what we call an object reference, right? Book will also have this kind of author right here. So now you see that in here we are not basically, so let's do this. So in here we are not basically doing the I correction or I numerable everything here, because this is the object reference, right? So book will have author will have a lot of books, right? So we can then enumerate them, or we basically list them. But you know, book might have an author. I mean, in our scope, we can do a validation and say book has one author, but in real world, a book might have different authors, right? Okay, so now one thing that we need to look into whenever we are building a .NET application is also what we call packages, right? Or dependencies, or whatever you think of, right? So we need to install this, and in Visual Studio 2026 is easy. We go here, we get our Nuggets kind of interface here. So what we need to do, right, is that we are going to use SQLite in this code. But don't worry, it's the same if you are using SQL Server, right? Also, don't worry about that, right? It's just that what we are changing is the connection string, right? Okay, good. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna bring this guy in, right? So just do that, and it's very fast. Visual Studio 2026, and I'm gonna put this guy on, and then we are gonna use entity framework call 2 because we are gonna perform migrations, right? So we're gonna do this and say that, hey, install tools, and accept this, and then we already have, we're gonna do Fluent validations, right? So we're gonna bring this guy up right here, where we're gonna add some validation to check if everything is working, right? One thing that whenever you are building your backend application, you want to keep in mind is that you do not want the user to, you are not going to assume anything for the user, right? So you have to make sure you validate whatever the user put in. So we are going to check that as well. So what we need to do at this point is that we have our packages and everything, and then in our domain layer we are already done with everything, right? So what we need to go is that we need to go to our DTOs. Let's add this S here, right? So that you see that we have DTOs, and then in DTOs it's basically simple, right? It's basically simple. So it's basically what we want to, so whenever what you want the user to put in, right? So let's say when you are creating book, what are the things that you require? It's different from what we have, which we call entity. This is basically in the database. In the database, this is what we're going to save. So something like GUI ID will be generate. I mean, we don't need, the user is not going to put that. So we're not going to allow the user to say put ID. Right? So how do we create something that will be easy for the user to put in? And I'm going to create all this DTO right here. And DTOs are just, I mean, we call it data transfer object, right? Data transfer object, right? So it's basically you trying to transfer data, right? How do you transfer data? So we're gonna bring all these guys in. We don't need to recreate these things. These are easy. So you put them on record and you say that, hey, this is the base DTOs. This is the base DTOs. And then we have a, so whenever we are fetching something from the database book, this is the structure that we want it to come. Right, so this is what DTO is. DTO is that saying that, hey, you have a lot of things in your database, but whenever you are creating something or you are getting something, I want you to give me it's in this structure. This is what we are looking into here, right? So a certain format and a certain structure. So that's why it's a data transfer object, right? So we are transferring data into a different format, in a different state or a different structure. So anytime you see DTOs in .NET application, don't worry about that. It's representing how you are structuring things up, right? So it means that we're gonna have DTO for all of them, right? So we're gonna have DTO for book, we're gonna have DTO for an author, right? Right. So basically that is it. So the concept is very easy. So I'm gonna bring them in. I've already prepared them so that we are not gonna spend a lot of time in here, right? So we can get back to the main business thing. So this is how it's gonna look like. If you wanted to, as I said, an author list book, right? So an author might have a lot of books. So we probably also do that I correction here, what we are looking into. So we're going to create this and then we update as well, right? And there are certain things we're going to do as well. We're going to do what we call API response. So as you start your journey or you're an experienced engineer already, whenever you build an API, it needs to have a certain structure. How the data is returned. How do you show the data to the front end, right? There's supposed to be some kind of a structure. So we're going to put that DTOs as here. We call it an API response, right? An API response is going to be some kind of generic, right? So we then can pass in different data to it, right? So, and if you have been following my video, you know that this is how I always do this, right? It's kind of easy where we have response, right? We have a success response and a fail response, right? So the data is going to be here, right? And then it has a success message, status code, and an error. If there is no error, it's going to be no, and everything like that. So one thing that we forgot to also install is called Scalar, right? So that package, I just remember, let's go and bring that guy in. So Scalar, .NET 6, those of us who started .NET 6, 7, I think we used to have this Swagger by default. So whenever you launch a .NET application, it's basically going to be this kind of Swagger, right? So when you launch a .NET application, and then it has Swagger by default, and you launch and open your browser and everything. And I think from .NET 9 it was changed, right? I think .NET. So now we can choose. There is this something that was introduced. So if you are new to .NET, don't worry. So this map OpenAI is giving you the opportunity to bring in what you want to use. So if I want to use Postman, I'm not going to put any visual or any interface in. I'm okay with this. I can go with this one, right? But if I'm interested, right? If I'm interested to bring in Swagger or Scalar, you can then bring it. So Swagger is not automatically removed from .NET, but it's giving you the opportunity to bring in all these things around. So we probably will go back to here, and then we say we want to install Scalar, right? So just a Scalar is another modding tool that helps you to make your API calls, and I love it. It's very nice. And so we gonna go for Scalar right here. So now Scalar is installed, right? I'm gonna show you how you can configure that right now. So right now we have our DTO, right? We have our DTO. We have the author, we have our API response, and basically we already aware that this is how our data is going to be structured, right? This is the API response. So we need to go and do something we call query, author query parameters, right? So now the reason why I want us to create this is that because the API we are going to build, we're going to do a lot of search. We might even search. We call something paginations, right? So with the concept of paginations, let's look into this DTO that I've pasted here, right? So now with the concept of pagination, you already know that this is our DTO. This is something this is our entity. This is what we are going to store in the database. So let's think of it. We built a big system where we have a lot of people coming in. So the more we get more authors coming into the platform, it means that the more we're going to have more books. And now, if you want to get books, it's going to be a lot of books. We don't want our system to pull everything. And what we are going to do is that, hey, we're going to have a way to limit a certain number of data you can pull at a time. And that's what we call pagination. So we just have a way to say that, hey, this is the number of information you can pull. So that if you want to go ahead, you go next. So that the system will have this kind of a break way of giving you information, and it's not going to be like you put all the information coming in at once and then the system gonna crash and everything. So they have a systematic way of giving you the information you want, right? So that is basically pagination. You can think of it like that. And these are the things we're gonna do. So we're gonna have this kind of sort. So this is basically what we have here. This is a query parameter. This is not pagination. This is a query. So this is where we're going to give you the user way of to sort and trying to search and everything, right? We're going to have the pagination also DTO coming in, right? We're going to have the pagination DTOs also coming in right here. So this is the pagination DTO. And this is the one I just explained, right? This is what I explained. I just explained pagination. That is the concept of pagination, right? And with the way we can also give additional. So these query parameters are just a way of helping the user to go for a specific information that the user wants. All right, let's say they want to search a certain name, they want to sort by certain name, or they want to do something, they can do that. And we are putting them as a DTO and giving them an option. So they execute that. We're going to write method to do all these things. All right. And the one thing we are going to look into is the book. So because the moment we have these, we need to basically we already have book parameters author. So it means that we're gonna have book as well. So I'm gonna have a book one coming in as well. So we're gonna copy that guy up. And then we put this guy. So this is also something that we're gonna write it up. So it's gonna take time. It's very easy. The goal is that we want, somebody can search a book by name, by the author, by the publication date and everything, ascending and all that. This is just an DTO. As I said, we want to perform a certain action with a certain data, and we are putting that into data. So now we are done, right? In Entity Framework or in .NET, now we are saying that this is the model, or this is the entity we want to put into the database. How do we do that? And then we go to the infrastructure, right? So we're going to create this class called application DbContext in the context. Here, let's go. So we're going to create this called application DbContext, and application DbContext is going to bring in inject DbContext from the entity framework core that we just installed, right? So you remember we're installing these packages, right? The tools and everything. So DbContext, and you can see it's coming from entity framework core. And what we are telling entity framework core, hey, we have something we want you to help us to save in the database. And one thing we can think of entity, so we have to save something in the database. And as I said, in normal way to talk to database, you're going to talk to database with SQL, structure query languages or something like that, right? And we have maybe Postgres, MySQL. There is a way to talk to the database, and you need to go and write queries. But what is happening in the entity framework core is, hey, I'm taking care of all those for you. So you are going to write everything in C# format, and I'm going to do the work under the hood for you, right? That is it. So in raw SQL, if you want to insert something to the database, you basically write, insert and all these things, update and all these things, queries. But entity framework core is giving you interface to write C# code and do it. It's gonna do that for you, right? So now, what's next? We probably going to have kind of a constructor way, right? Yeah, and call it either. So we're going to say that public application here. We are bringing this I option right here. And as I said, this is application DbContext. This is our DbContext, and it has DB options, database options, right? Because we have a course coming in where we're gonna look into how you can also inject this kind of identity kind of tables into ASP.NET Core. So it's sometimes you have a different way of doing it, right? So it's giving you an option. We will not talk, much about it, but there's upcoming videos we will look into it more. So we're gonna go and say public right here. So this we are writing inside. We don't write inside. So we say public db set, right? Db set. So db set db set, right? This is db set, and db set is gonna take in what do we want to insert. Our book, right? First is the book, and coming from the mod, and then we want to basically give it, say, hey, this is book, right? And maybe we can say no, maybe it's got to, no, just to make sure we don't get some funny errors here, right? And then we're gonna bring in our author as well, right? Good. Now this is good. We have inserted this into our database, right? So entity framework core is going to handle the insertion for us. But the funny part is that there's some kind of relationship among these things, right? So when you take the book, you see that an author might have a lot of books. So how do we then tell our database? Because we know about relational database, which means that some things have relationship. Non-relational means that we are trying to store this in unstructured, right? So it's mean that anything can just go in there. We talk of Agile Cosmos DB, we talk of MongoDB, and we talk about relational database, we talk about Postgres, we talk about SQL Server, which is my SQL kind of format, right? And these are the databases. So in here, we're going to use entity framework, but we are going to use SQLite, which has some kind of something, right? But we need to tell the SQLite that, hey, there is the relationship. And that is what we're going to do here. So now, we need to tell entity framework core to do something for us. We say that entity framework core, we are going to do some kind of relationship. Manually, we're going to tell you how our relationship is working so that you understand it. And when you execute it in the database, you'll be able to do it for us. And that is what we're going to do. So we're going to bring this guy here where we're going to call it protected, right? We're going to have this protected class, right? So let's go and have this protected, and it's override. The Copilot is giving us what are we writing here? We don't want this for now. The protected is wrong, right? Protected override, right? It means that we're gonna try to override everything and say that, hey, this is how we want our thing to be. And we're gonna do this called base, and it's an on module creation right here, which we are trying to define here. So in the base module creation right here, we want to have our builder, which is we want to have our model builder right here, right? And then we're gonna do this. So when we get this, now we have access to our model builder. We can go ahead and say the application. So now we're gonna do what we call configuration. One interesting part, what we are trying to do in here is that what is happening here? What is happening here is that, hey, we are going to do something. And anytime you see something like a summary in .NET, try to think of it as something trying to scan something, right? Because we're going to create a configuration to tell entity framework core or to say how our relationship is, It's looking like how it's talking to each other. And we don't want to statically say it right here. We want you to scan. So there's something called I configuration. We're gonna create that in a minute. So it will scan that and it will pick that. All right. So that is why you say that application from assembly. It's gonna scan this and it's gonna find all these things for us. So if you see these, don't worry about all these things, right? It's gonna scan this and then find the configuration. So I've been talking about configurations, which is a way for us to normally customize how our relationship is looking like. What we have done in our entity is not called relationship, it's called navigations. This navigate to this, so we can think of that. But we need to tell entity framework how our navigate everything. So we're gonna create a folder called configuration in here. We already have it here, right? So we already have our configuration kind of thing that we created. So what we need to do with the configuration is that we're going to create a book configuration and we're going to create an author configuration as well. So the first one we create is that we're going here and say, hey, we want to create this an author configuration. It means that we're going to specify how the author configuration is looking like in here. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to have this I configuration coming from entity framework. We're going to install this guy and it's an interface. So we're going to implement, we're going to bring the model and then I'm going to implement the interface, right? So this is specifically going to tell the ASP core.NET, entity framework or how our relationship. So if I want to do something friendly here, I can say builder, it has a key, right? It has key, right? What key are we talking about? ID, right? And then Copilot is trying to suggest something that is wrong. So it has a property of name and then it's required. So anytime you are creating a book in the database configuration, we are doing validation. So it means that name is required. And then we can give it a mass length, right? So maybe you cannot go beyond 100 and everything. But here is where Copilot is getting it wrong, because here we have biography as well. I think it's biography instead of this, right? So basically here, this is it. So this is basically, we can copy the same thing. We can copy the same thing and then we change that to kind of a book configuration, right? So we're gonna do this. It's a book. Now we want to copy this. This is what we are interested in. So we pick the author configuration and then we say that we want to do same for book. So it's simple. I can go in here and I want to go and change this to book configuration, and I'm gonna bring this guy. And what we do is we do this and then we implement the interface. But here is where it gets interesting. Book have this kind of relationship. So we're gonna learn about this relationship right here. So in here it's gonna get interesting because we have relationship. So we can basically say builder right here, and this has a key, right? Copilot is suggesting something and we believe it's gonna be wrong. Let's review that. So it has an ID, a key of this. It has a property. So properties are things that we have inside, which is good. It has book here. Book, we are saying that. So this is one thing we want to look into, right? When it comes to this entity thing, right? So now let's go inside, right? So this is very interesting thing that I want you to basically look into. Right now, we're saying that, hey, it's going to have one book. So this is the relationship we are talking about, right? And the properties, I think we can, if you want, sometimes it's not important, but if you want to spend more time here, we can say that, hey, it has a property of let's say it has a property of B, and I'm going to say that it has a property of data or is publicated or something, and we can say those things are required. What is the required means is that, hey, whenever you are creating all those things, Entity Framework is expecting you to provide these things, right? You cannot leave it. You need to provide those things, right? That is one thing. So, and one thing is that we are saying that, hey, it has one author right here and with many books, right? And it has a foreign key. So foreign key is the author ID. So the book is referenced by the author ID. And we in the navigations, you will see that we're doing it. We're saying that, hey, book has an author ID right here, right? So this is what we call configuration. And imagine it's a complex relationship that we have a complete crash course coming in with Entity Framework where we will look in more in depth about all these things, right? So now we are done with our DbContext. We are done with all these things, right? One last thing that I want to do is a concept of seed, right? So let's say we are creating books, right? But before we can get book from our database, we basically need to create them manually. So there is this concept of seed. It means that we can have some data that we put in our database when the application runs, so that we can use it to do our test, right? This is I mean, kind of whenever you are building an API in the dev environment, you may have some seed login password and everything. You don't want to recreate them every time. You want to put them in there and it's over there. So we're gonna go to here, and in .NET it's very easy to do that. We're gonna go to the data section, and we're gonna say that, hey, we want to do what we call data seed. So we create a class called data seeder, which means that a seed something, it push information, which is a book and author, right? So we're going to create the book and author, and then we store those things in the database. And we're going to have this as static class. I've already prepared kind of a awesome book that I want to save, and I'm going to bring that right here so that we will look into it, right? We don't want to write all of them from scratch. So it's following the structure that we are using, right? So it means it tells that the way I prepare this is different from the entity, right? So the book needs to have this instead. It needs to have a datetime of publication date. So if we do that in here, we need to change this to publication date. Okay, good. And then you see that it's gonna work now, we believe. So what we are doing here is basically very simple. And what we are doing is that we are creating some author whenever the application run, right? And we are going to do this in when we go to the program.cs. I'm going to show you how we're going to do a lot of things in there. But we are basically trying to put some authors into the book, to the database when the application run, and then we are linking them because there is a relationship between book and an author, right? So we are then trying to create the relationship and everything. So we are creating some manual dates and everything so that whenever the application run, and we basically trying to, so you see that we are bringing the application DbContext, which means that that's our database. And we think of application DbContext is that what allow us to pull something into the database. And now we are here with the seed. Seed means that we want to pull something into the database. And then how do we do that? The entry point should be there, or context. What we know of, we think of SQL as we want to pull something into the database, but the entity framework is taking care of that through the application context, right? So we bring that one and we do that. So that is basically, think of this as seed, as we trying to pull something into the database. We are done with the infrastructure, right? And then we are done with our domain. Domain, we are not done yet. So we go to our domain folder with something we call exceptions. So how do we handle exception? In .NET 8, something was introduced, iGlobal exceptional handler interface was introduced, and make it easy to do a global exceptional handler. It means that we can handle exception globally. no matter where it's happening. We can have a structure, which is a program DTO. Details. So that was introduced. So I'm gonna go, and first of all, before we take care of that, we're gonna go to our exception folder, right? And then we're gonna do that. So now here, we think of exception, right? Most backend engineers, mostly sometimes exception is complicated, right? So exception sometimes is complicated, right? As you think of exception and error, what is the difference? Exceptions, right? We have a logic, business logic. And so when something goes wrong, we want to tell the user that, hey, you were doing something wrong. With true exception, we tell you that, hey, the username you have provided is incorrect. And still the system works because our business logic is sitting on the error. It's basically sometimes it happens like that. The system needs to, it means that something has happened, which is, so we can think of error as a system level, right? So let's say when there is an error, the application might not even run. But exception means that we are aware that you might provide a wrong username. And then when the wrong username comes, we are telling you that this username is not valid. And that is what we are talking about. So let's go and implement these things right here. So exceptions in ASP.NET Core, or you can say in .NET, we have this exception, which interface that we can basically inherit, right? And then it gives us where we can create an exception in .NET, right? So we probably have a way to do it, and you can see it's an interface. It's trying to kind of partial class, and it have this environment interface and everything. So let's go back and then prepare all the exceptions, and then we're going to have a simple exception, because here we're going to have like domain exception. Exception means that, how do we do it? So we can think of it as I said, not found, right? So we just have say not found. When something is not found, we do the bad request. Conflict means that a duplication or something. You can have a lot of exception, but because of this application, we are going to have this simple exception coming in right here. So now we have the exception. We are done with our domain DTO. So now we're going to go to the fun part, right? We're going to go into our application where we're going to do more logic. So we are back into the fun part. We're going to create a couple of folders here in our application. So we're going to first of all create something I call interface. Right, I'm going to create this called interface. Very kind of simple. And I'm going to create something called mapping. I'm gonna talk about mapping in a minute, right? So I'm going to talk about mapping in a minute. We're going to create a new folder called mappings right here. We're going to talk about middleware, right? Middleware. So we're going to talk about middleware and filters and everything, right? So let's go here. As I said, this is a beginner kind of .NET 10 crash course, but it's teaching you production grid structured, how you do things, production. Some of the concepts it's going to help you to build production ready applications. All right. So we are going to go here. We're going to say that middleware. We probably will also have a service. So I'm going to create a service right here. I'm going to create a service. So I'm going to spend a lot of time here because you can see a lot of things that we are creating here is going to take time, right? So we're going to go here when I'm going to create this right here, validator. So we're going to have a way to validate whatever the input the user is going to put in. So we're going to look into also that. Yeah, so at this point, what we need to continue with is the interfaces. So we are going to do the interface part where we will then implement some kind of interfaces. What the interfaces are going to do is that it's going to implement the logic, right? So with this concept, let's start whilst we are talking about interfaces. So mostly in .NET application, you are going to see the I interfaces and all that. And I'm just making it simple is here. So we are going to create an interface, but most applications, maybe you're going to see abstractions, right? And then you're going to see the interface. Depending, as I said, this we are not focusing on implementing reward kind of stuff. So I forgot to make this interface. This is supposed to be an interface, right? So what we're going to do is that this is going to be a task of and then we're going to have this pagination. So we're going to say pagination response coming in here, and what it's going to take is that it's going to take the book DTO and then it take the book query. So if you are wondering where this is coming from, this is basically coming from the DTO that we created. So you remember we were creating a DTO, so all these things are coming from in there. So as I said, with the DTO, the purpose here is that we are going to create something. We already have entity in our database, which here we have created it as model. But what we want to do is that we want to put something to the database, and we want to structure it such a way that this is what we want to send, or this is what we want to get, right? So we can think of DTOs as like that. So we are also going to do I'm going to do, because we'll be able to search for book, right? So we're going to say that we're going to do book DTO, and this, when we search for book DTO, we probably also want to get pagination response, right? So we are going to have a pagination response, and this is wrong. Copilot is trying to suggest something for us, but this is not what we are interested in. So what we are interested in, let's shift this more right here. What we are interested in is that this is going to be I'm going to make this search search book, right? Async. So we're going to search books, let's say books async, right? So this is where we search for book, and then when you are searching for book, you're basically going to have a book item. We don't want like this, so we're going to have this guy here. What is happening is that when we search for book, we probably won't, you know, this is a pagination response, but when you check the pagination, kind of this one, we decided to put this in a DTO, right? So here we are just putting it. You can pass in it like that, but you can also put it into DTO, right? So let's go ahead and create all of them. I'm not going to create one of them, but let me bring all of them here for you to see what we are going to create here. So basically, this is the interface we're going to create for the book, right? So we want to get book by ID. We create book, and then we update book, and then we delete book. But this is what's going to happen here. We have already the DTO of creating a book. So it means that anytime we are creating a book, these are what we are going to require from the user. This is what we're going to request from the user. So basically, this is it. So let's go ahead and create the author book service as well. So this is book. So it's gonna use the same kind of format, right, to do the work. So let's go ahead and have this guy up, and then here I always forgot to choose interfaces, and it's going to be the same. We already have the DTO, so as what we already have in here. So to make the video short, I'm going to bring this guy in so that it's going to be kind of easy for us, right? Okay, so this is what we are going to have in the book too. We're going to get author book right here, and it has a query parameters. It means that we'll be able to specify some conditions that we want, right? So we can say, hey, we want to get book sort by maybe a certain book name or kind of stuff, like, you know. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we are done here, and there is one thing that we also want to do, which we call mapping, right? So before we get to the service, we have a concept of mapping. And in .NET, let's go and say that we want something like auto mapper, right? Let's say auto mapper here in .NET is one of the most popular library that you can use, right? Let me search it for in Nuggets right here. So AutoMapper, what it does is that, as I said, now we have two things here. You can use AutoMapper, but in this video, we are not using AutoMapper. We are creating our own manual extensions, right? Mapping extensions. So, which is kind of interesting to learn the basis of what mapping most basically does, so that if you are using any external packages, you get to understand why certain things are happening, right? So in this one, we are not going to use automapper. What mapping is doing is that now we have these DTOs, right? And then we have something which is the entity which is going to be in our database. And what we want to do is that we want to then map them and say that, hey, even if you are creating an author DTO, these are the things that we when you are creating an author or you are creating a book, these are the things that we require from you, but we are mapping this into what we have in our database, right? Which is the model. So I'm going to create, we already have pagination. I'm going to create pagination kind of extension, and I'm going to create book right here. So let's go and do that logic right here. So in the mapping, we're going to create another class, right? Let's create another class called book extension, and these are going to be static classes, right? Right, so let's do this, and then we are going to, if you don't know what static classes are, it's kind of simple. These are basic C# concepts, right? We are focusing on .NET how to create an API right here, right? So these are going to be static class right here, and then we're going to create an author extension right here. So we're going to look into this guy here. We're going to create these things, and let's try to make this one also a static class. Now let's start with this one. So here you're going to have a static class, have some kind of a static method right here, and then we're going to say that author DTO. So we are bringing the DTO, and then we map, right? So we're going to say that, let's say to DTO, right? To DTO. Right, to DTO. Let's make the DTO here, and then now we are going to bring our book entity right here. So this book DTO is the certain kind of requirements here. We don't want it, but this is correct. The Copilot is doing it correct though, but we can go and remove this guy and then just try to import this guy up, right? And then what it's trying to do is, we don't want to do this. So here you see how we are doing the mapping. So from the DTO, what we say is that we already have author ID right here, which is coming from so we're gonna say that we're gonna have author right here. This is the author. So inside the author we have ID, right? And then we're gonna do this, and say author name, and then it's gonna be like this, and then we're gonna have biography. So biography, and that is it. And then we're gonna have some kind of this, right? Good. So we are getting an error. The error is saying that no argument required of I correction of this, right? So there is I correction here, which means that, when we go to this DTO, we have this, right? Which is the author DTO. We have I correction of books. Okay, good. So this is great, and we need to choose that. So we select this guy up right here. So these are the books. So we want to fix this I correction thing right here. Okay. So what is the issue right here? GUI I correction, this is not. So let me do this. Public, let's go back to this guy. We don't need this. And then inside this, we bring this guy. Okay. So book does not contain the definition of. Don't worry. We will do book in a minute, right? So this is the first. We map So anytime you are getting a book from, you can say map to DTO, and it will pick what we want to show to the user, right? So we did a book DTO, but we have a lot of information in the database, right? So in the same format, well, let's go to the entity. Entity is basically when we want to create. So we can do this, right? So here, what we can say is that create, right? Convert the create DTO to the author entity here, and then this is basically when we want to get it, right? Good. So now what about update, right? You can say public static class right here, and we want to update, so we can say update from DTO, right? And then it goes to that, and then it does this work for us. Okay, so we are having an issue, but don't worry, we'll fix this. So now this is how the mapping works. If you want the simple way, you can use the auto mapper, which will do everything for you, right? So you don't need to understand what is going on. But in our case, we are not using auto mapper. I think auto mapper now is in enterprise kind of level, like that. So you see there is a lot of downloads in here as well. So we are doing manually. So this is, if you are not using automapper, this is how you do it. So let's go and do the same for the book, right? So let's go and do the same for the book. So the book are going to have these guys, which is gonna be easy, right? So how do we do this? These are the guys that you need. It's the same thing. What we basically do is that book DTO to DTO, we bring the book. This, remember, this book is the entity, right? This is what we have. This is what is gonna be in our database. So we're gonna bring these guys up, and this is one we want to create. And when we get to the service, you understand. So, and that is it. So, and then when we also update book from here. Okay, so now we have done this for these guys. So now you see we have book also have map to, so it's gonna be easy for us, right? So now let's do the pagination right here, because we do not want to repeat ourselves. Those of us who have experience already in .NET, you know, working with pagination sometimes is kind of complex, right? Because whenever the data is coming in, you want to structure it in a certain way. So what I want to do at this point is that I want to go ahead and do this, right? This is pagination. This is kind of generic pagination that I'm gonna use, right? And we have pagination response, so it means that all the data we are going to have gonna come in such a way like this, right? In a point, we do not need to put the item here, right? But you know, in some way, let's keep it like that. Okay, good. So now we have our mapping extension, everything looking good, right? So the next step is that, so now let's move fast and create our services, right? So now we have the interfaces. So as I said, it means that when we have iBook service, it means that we're going to have book service. And we have iAuthor service, it means that we're going to have author service, right? So let's go and create these guys. Simple. So we go to the service here, we add a new class, which is this, right? So it's a public class. We then going to inject, we're gonna bring the author, let's go to the author service, right? So author service, this is not authorization service, and then we then implement all the interfaces. So you can see now we have this here and it's looking good, right? So it means that we have a lot of work to do. We need to implement all this. So most cases, your logic is going to sit in the service, right? So here we're going to have all the business logic sitting in here. So other things are going to add up, but this is it. So let's probably go to the book service as well. So we go into the book service and then we create another class like this, and then also this is going to also bring this guy up. So we're gonna use this guy, and then I'm gonna implement all the interfaces, right? So all the interfaces now, we have them here. So it's not, all of them now is not implemented, right? It's good. We're going to do a lot of work there. So we can think of the services as a center point, right? We have our database created, we have our validations, we have our exceptions, which we have already created. So we're going to, in the middleware, we're going to create something we call global exceptional handler, right? Which means that anytime there is an exception somewhere, right? And I was explaining the difference between exception and error, right? Error mostly will break the application. Exception means that you probably intentionally, you are telling the user something, right? So basically error and exceptions are not the same at a point, right? But at a point, you can just say it like that, right? So when there is an error, this application, when there is an error in this application, there's going to be, it's not going to run, right? And when there is an exception, we have created our exceptions, and intentionally we want to show certain things to the user, right? And that is what we want to do. So now we have our services created. Let's go and do something. Before we start this, we need to create the global exception. So if you remember, we have already created our exceptions. Exceptions are intentionally what we want to show to the user in case something happens. So when you look into this, you can see we have not found, right? We have conflict, we have bad request, and these are the things that we are creating, right? So that we can basically, we're going to also bring some of them from .NET by default, right? So you can see we are trying to inherit this exception. So this kind of helping us to basically have this structure as an exception. But the global exceptional handler has something, it's called problem detail, which also help us. So let's go without, let's implement that one as well. So we're gonna call it global exceptional handler, right? Let me rename this global exceptional handler, right? Okay, so let's add this to it, and then this is gonna do that. So public class, and it has this interface of iExceptional handler, right? So we're gonna bring this guy called iException, right? Okay, so this keyboard, so iExceptional handler. So you can see it's coming in here, and we need to implement a couple of interfaces. Try, handle, sync, right? So this is basically going to handle most of our exception for us, right? So let me go to different lines so that you see it well here. So that is it. So with this one, mostly what I want to do is that I would like to write this logic right here. So let's go and say private read only. We bring iLogger so that if in case something is happening, we'll be able to put this guy on. We don't want to, you see, this is trying to implement a wrong logic, but let's also do this. We can bring this guy, let's see, read only, and I can say I host. All right, I host builder, right? I host environment. Read only. So private read only. I host. Okay. Oh. Okay. Yeah. I host environment, and go this, and then this is need to come to the here as well, right? And I want to call it this. We can call it this instead, right? Okay, now here we are going to do a couple of things, right? This is going to be fun, and we're going to learn a lot right here. So we first of all, we log when there is an exception. Okay, we start this execute, right? It's a boolean, so you check if everything went successful, everything is successful, right? So at the end of the day, we're gonna return true or false, right? Okay, good. Now there's a couple of methods that I'm gonna declare here. So first of all, we're gonna have private, and I'm gonna say private static hint, right? So this is gonna become some kind of integer right here. I'm gonna say get status code, right? We don't want to implement anything in this right now, but I'm gonna go say get status code kind of exception, right? This is not going to have anything yet, right? We want to keep this right, and then I'm going to have another one which we're going to call it private right here. We're going to call it private static. So this is basically going to return a couple of strings and say get title, right? Copilot is going to disturb us, right? Get title for exception. So this method, I mean, Copilot is giving us a better name, so we probably will use that as well. So the next thing we want to do is that now all the exception that we created, right? We're gonna bring them here, and then we assign some kind of status codes to it. Right? This is simple. We want to have a global exception. So anytime there was an exception somewhere happening, we want to return it in a way the application globally it will be able to give it a better context. And then all these trees, ID and everything will be showing you because of there is something built called program details. We're gonna bring it that guy here so that you see how we probably will also will be using it to do everything. So yeah, so we will see how this is gonna look like. So as I said, this is going to be very kind of simple for us, right? And if we want, we can then use the environment, right, to check where we are right now, whether we are at the production level or we are at the what did they call it, locally or something. So I'm going to show you how you can use that. So first of all, I'll probably will say that, and this is something that you basically would like to get the details for the exception. So this is we check if this is environment. I don't want to do this right now. This is wrong, right? This is wrong right here. So we already have that one instantiated right here. So it's gonna give us public. We can see that this is not even going to, and this is going to be an exception. So you're taking only exception like this. And then what we want to do is that we want to do a check. So we can say if right here, if the environment, right, we can return something like this. But I have a better way of doing this. So we check if this is the development, right? And then we already have, so we can see n, right, and get status exception, this, right? Yeah, let's go to exception. This is good, right? On internal server error, we're gonna so if it is not, right, so you can use this to basically, you can return this, or we don't need else here, and then we can return exception should have what they call message, right? And then we return this guy up here. Okay, good. So now basically these are all private method we're gonna use, right, to make things work. So this is simple. The extensions, the exceptions that we have created, right, we have created in here, we are going to bring them in alongside with some of the ASP.NET or .NET inbuilt kind of exceptions, right? And then we put all of them in there. So let's go back to where we are. So here is going to be very simple like that. All we want to do is that, hey, we have not found exception, right? And then not found exception, what status code are we going to give it? So let me start with one. So let's say not found exception. When we start with not found, right, we have not found exception. We should not found No, we are missing something. We need to switch them, right? So we need to switch them. So we say we switch, and now we can do this. So very, very simple here. If not found, these are .NET, so we can say not found, which is our exception that we created, right? So we say not found exception. Oh, so Copilot is gonna make our work easier right now, right? Because so this is our not found exception, and then we assign it to some kind of .NET kind of status code. So anytime this not found happens, or we use it anywhere, this status code is gonna show, right? So I'm going to go ahead and then bring in that guy, all of them, how I'm doing it, right? So that we just go into the main logic and we not repeat ourselves. So this is it, right? It's very, very simple. Not found. When these are we can say these are system exceptions. So these are .NET inbuilt system exceptions as well. And then with that, we can what we are doing is that get title exception. We can assign some titles to the exception. So when it happens, what title do we want to show and all that. So that is also something we can do from here. So we gonna do the same, right? And what we do is that we are gonna do it like this. And remember, we always need to switch, right? So we switch them up here. Let's do this. I'm doing it wrong. So the first step is that we are gonna do switch case, right? So Copilot is doing this for us, but in our case, it's trying to spoil the code for us. So this is what we want, great. And in our case, this is what we want because these are the exceptions that we have. And then we are going to use this in the try handle async, right? So now these are the exceptions, and most applications are going to have a lot of exceptions. And somebody who may even ask disadvantage, what if we have a lot of exceptions? It's going to be an issue, right? Don't worry, it's always going to be, there was a better way, which I'm going to show in my next video, how when there is a lot of exception, how do you handle them? And you're not going to put all of them in here as well, because always this can be always a private class somewhere where you can bring it here. So now, what is the next step? Right, the next step is kind of easy. So all we do is that we are going to go in here, and with this one we already do the log right here. We are not going to return anything yet, right? We just log this guy up. And then what I'm going to do is that, as I told you already, there is something that will return a good structure. So I'm going to say var, and I'm going to say that program details, and it's going to create a new instance of program details. So it's something we should probably bring. We need to import it from the ASP.NET Core MVC right here. And then we bring this guy up. And what this guy have is a lot. So he has status code, which means that we can then assign the status codes to the what we are creating here, because this will give us the status code. When we get the status code, what we are doing is that, hey, the status code, the program detail, what is trying to return is we want to assign the status codes to it. So we can go, we are not building this yet. We can go to the program detail and see what the program details are. Right, it has this kind of instance, it has the details and everything, right? So the details are where we say we get a title of it. It has title as well, so we can probably assign title to it. And the details, we have get details as well, right? So we can have some kind of get details exception right here. So let's go ahead. So this is get details, right? So get details are going to get the details from here for us, right? Okay, good. So now let's go ahead and say that, hey, we get the details. What about the instance, right? Where normally, so it has this. Let's put this guy up like this so that we get the instance coming in, and then this is it. So when everything happens like that, what we want to do is that, hey, program DTO, right? So we're going to say program DTO. So this is even a complete global exceptional handler I'm showing you right here. So we're going to have this guy, and it has something called extension. So we're going to have extension right here, and then when we get extension, it has something we call add, and then inside the add, what the Copilot is trying to suggest is correct, but it's not correct, right? And then we say if we, in our case, we do not want to do this, right? That, so if the domain exception is an exception, right, we probably want to so we want to do this and say that, hey, exception, right, is domain exception. All right, and then we say domain exception, and the program DTO gonna give us this. So if the domain exception count is 0, right? If the domain count, domain exception here, it's some, we need to get context from this. What is context? Right. Okay, so domain exception. If domain exception dot context, we need to, what are we doing wrong right now? Yeah, so I remove this additional check, right? To make things easy for us, we can just remove this guy up, and what we want to do is that we want to return a certain stuff, right? So if the environment, what we want to do is just, if we can return these guys up, we want to add, you see, one thing I want to show you is that you can say that if the environment is development, include the stack trees, right? So we can say that in development, right? In development, we want to include it, yeah, we include this guy. So if this is this included, yeah, and then this is, yeah, what Copilot suggests is kind of correct application, then we just have HTTP context, and then we say that, hey, it's going to be this status and all that, but we do not want to the complex Copilot one. So this is good if this is development. We don't want to have all of these things already. We already have this, so this is good. We like only this, right? Add this, and then we say that. So I don't know if we should disable Copilot because it's giving us a lot of things we don't want. HTTP context here, and then it has a response, and then we're going to have this status code right here, and then it's going to go to program details right here, right? And then we see status. So we're going to have this status right here, and then we want to get the value of it, right? So when we get these guys up, we then come in here, and then what we want to do is that we want to do await, because first of all, this is async, right? We want to write this guy up, and then we return true, right? So this is basically how we do some kind of a global exceptional handler. So this is going to handle our exception globally. For us, we don't need these guys. So Visual Studio 2026 has this thing built, right? Let's go. So now we have our global exceptional handler ready. So it means that we can go and start implementing our services, right? So which service are we going to implement first? Because we need to implement the alter service, because if you don't have alter right here, it's going to be hard for us to do all these things. But there is something that we need to also focus on, which we call validators. With it, the concept of validation is that you do not want the user to, to try to post or send a data you don't want. So even if you trust the user, you need to make sure that that is the correct data that you want. So we have validators here, and we are using the concept of fluent validation, which means that we can have something create for us, right? So we're going to create a couple of validators. So, and we're going to, if it is create, so when at a point where you do validation is when the user is doing a request, or when the user is creating or updating, you can do a request, right? So validation. So let's go into our validator right here, and we're going to say that, hey, we're going to bring in what we call create alter validator, which means that anytime we are creating alter, we want this validation to be fired, right? So that we check to make sure that, hey, this is, and then we remember we already have the Fluent package installed. So we're going to use that guy up, and we're going to bring in create this alter right here. So this is a kind of a generic interface that accepts whatever you want to do. So it's acceptee, right? Yeah, so you can see this is the case right here, right? Yeah, so okay, so now we know that this is how it's gonna be, right, whenever you are creating. So we can create a validation rule, right, which Copilot is trying to suggest some of them for us. So we can say that, hey, whenever you are creating an alter, we require you to have name. Whenever you are creating, we can have the mask length, and then if you do this, so we can say name, and then we can say that, hey, it shouldn't be empty. So when it's empty, we can even write message, right? When this is we write, okay, we say with message, right? So if we say that name is required, right? So when you are creating, let's delete all of this, then use this for example. So whenever you are creating an alter here, so imagine if it is a certain application you are building, anytime there is a user sending something coming in, you are going to make sure that this is supposed to be required with message. So here we can require the username because it's just the demo showing you how, and then we can write another rule for biography, right? We can write another rule for biography. So we say rule, and then this is biography, and then biography can have the same thing. So it means that whenever you are creating an alter, we require you to have name, and then if you miss anything, these messages are going to show it. So these are the Fluent validation concept right here, and then we're going to do the same for book and everything. So it's going to be create book. So we're going to say that, hey, whenever we want to create book, right here, this is the create book validator right here, we're going to have, right? And then we probably also going to have some kind of query parameters validations as well, because anytime you are passing a query parameter here. So this, as I said, this video is showing you how you can do production ready stuff, right? Not just to, so we're going to say that, hey, whenever we want to update an alter to, we probably will have some kind of requirement, but this is not the right way, because user can then try to do a certain stuff, right? So for the update, we can always leave it like that, right? Because in the real world, a user might update a certain information and leave the rest, right? But if you know update, it's a simple kind of update, you can then come up and create all these validators, right? So whenever a user is trying to update something, you have to make sure that they are not going to remove their names and everything, right? So you can do all these things. So I'm just going to show you, but I'm giving you a scenario where you might not use it, right? But we're going to add it here in case in the near future you want to basically do all these things, right? So let's have updates with this one as well. Okay, so the validations, all of them are going to be like this one, right? The same logic, and so we don't need to repeat ourselves. I'm going to bring those guys in so that our video will be short But so let me bring them in here. I already prepared them. I'm gonna bring them inside for us to look into what is happening. So if I want to create a book, I can have this book validator right here coming in, and as I said, it's the same format. We write a rule for title. Hey, so whenever you are creating a book, we require you to the book to have a certain title, and then the max length of it can be 200. We can make it 5 or 6, and then it should be having an author ID, because an author is supposed to create a book, right? So that is basically it as well. So we can have a publication date. We are all valid. So the rest are going to follow the same pattern. It's kind of easy to understand, and I'm going to make the code also available for you to go through. But the concept is that the properties that the user is going to import, we want to check them. So we are writing rules for them, right? Which is, as a point, is kind of simple, right? So let's go and then bring the query perimeter here as well, and let's see what is happening in the query perimeters as well. What validation do we have in the query perimeters, right? So in the query perimeter, this is a query perimeter here validation. So we, anytime we want to have the page number, page size, sort by. But I'm just trying to, in your real world application, you might not go and implement this if you don't need, right? So anytime you are doing some kind of author, and here we have an author, this is a book, right? So anytime we are doing the book validation, all these things supposed to be, so it must be greater than or equal to, sort by must be off, right? The page size between 1 and 50, the page number. So all these things, we are validating them, right? So just to show you how the validation works, right? In certain scenarios that you might even do validation to make sure that your application is well solid, right? As I said, update, we have to be very careful with update, right? Because you do not allow the user to anytime they want to update something, they should provide name, right? Yeah, so you can do the validation, but be careful how you are doing it. So what I'm going to show you, so it's also the same with what is going to change is the DTO. So it's the same logic, but the DTOs that we are writing the update for, we want to write the rule for, is what we are going to bring in. So it's basically easy. And then we're going to have this is update author right here, and then we have update book as well. So update book, I've already prepared all the this one, so it's the same, so that we go fast. So this is also basically it here. Title is required, so you always need to bring this from the Fluent validation package, right, where it says the abstraction validator, and it is always going to take the DTO that you want to write this rule for. So from now, this is going to be tracked, right? This is going to be tracked. So anytime we are working with this DTOs, these rules are going to be there waiting for the to be make sure that the validation works. So this is very kind of stuff, right? So there is this concept we are going to look into in .NET. So that concept is a concept of middleware and filters, right? So you are going to meet this a lot whenever you are working with .NET, because what we just created here, which that is why I intentionally gave it a name of middleware, and then you see that with a try handle async, it's using something called DbContext. So this is giving us a CRUD, right? What is happening? So when you check here, you see that we have even iService provider here. I don't want to go through all of this thing, but we can see HTTP response, HTTP request, and this is DbContext. So it means that whenever we do a middleware, whenever HTTP request comes in, this middleware will be triggered, right? So it's an HTTP kind of, it operates globally on every HTTP request and response, right? So this global exceptional handler, that is how it's going to operate, right? And now we have our validator thing. That is where we use filters, right? we want to target this validation and say that, hey, when you come into the validation, we want the validation something to be triggered, right? Because this validation, we don't want to use it everywhere and you say, no. We want to create something that will handle it. So that is where we created a folder called filters right here. Let me see, we've created it. We should have that in here. We have a validator right here. If we don't have it, we need to create it, right? So we're going to create that kind of a new folder. Let's go to the application and add a new folder right here. Call it filters. These filters, we are going to create authentication. So we can basically use middleware for authentication. But basically you may use filters for validations, right? So let's go here and create validation filter, right? We're going to call this class validation filter. And you see that with the global exception handler, right? With the global exception handler, we were trying to implement something they call we're implementing exception handler, and the exception handler has a method, right? This is an interface, and it has a method called try handle async, which has the HTTP context in it. Now, with the filters, it's going to have something we call the async action filter, right? If I'm right, let's go and see. Let's go and try to see to implement it if I'm right down, right? So this, we're going to implement this this is also an interface, right? So async action filter here, and that is it. And it also has a method, right? But this method has different than action execution. So we can go to the action execution and check what this is about, right? And then this action execution, what they are trying to do is that it created a new instance of this action right here. So it means that we probably going to use this to target, right, our kind of filters, right? So let's go ahead and do this private read only, and I'm gonna bring what we call iService provider, right? No. So I'm gonna bring iService provider, and I'm gonna, and since we have this, we're gonna have a constructor. This is it, and the goal is that now we have this guy, we have put this guy in the constructor. We are going to make sure that the validators are going to work, right? So anytime we do this validation, and then the Fluent validation has a method called validator, we want to call it, right? And this is what we want to do. So let's, first of all, we're going to have this for each here, which I think is good. So let's do this for each, and you say var, yeah, this is giving us good thing, right? But so this is saying that if this is not no, it's no, we don't want to continue validation context. I just want to check. We don't want to have all these guys up. Let's write our own. So say var argument type, right? These are filters thing that we are writing globally. It's not that kind of globally, but to target. Let's see if Copilot is giving us, yes, it's giving us something good. I can see. But we have this validator type here. We got the value right here, and we say validator here. We have this validator and execute service. We bring in as validator if it's not, yeah, and then we bring this context right here. So this is going to be a new, it's getting it wrong since here. So here we're gonna be like, we're gonna have new validator validation context, right? Okay, this validation context, and we're gonna have this kind of object, and we pass in the argument to it, and we're gonna say that we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna say var validation results, right? Let's call this validation results. The Copilot is giving us validation outcome, but let's probably pick this as validation results. Okay, and I say that wait, validation. Okay, good. This is right. Now, if we get here, we want to do this check. If the validation, yeah, if it is not valid, we want to give you certain kind of a message. But here, if the mode state, so I will explain this in more. What I want to do is that I want to have error. Okay, so let's say if errors happens, which the validation errors, we want to have the validation results. So validation results, which is this guy we created here. Copilot is not making it good for us, so it's gonna have this errors. We want to basically, this is bad, right? When we have these errors, so most cases Copilot make the work more even difficult for you to do, right? So here I'm gonna have errors, and then what I want to do is that I want to select, right? The select is wrong, is correct here, but I want to go and have let's say this is how we do the select right here, and then I want to have here, there should be some error message, right? And then we want to put this into a list, not array, right? Okay, good. So when we get this, we then come here, we want to structure return this, we can do a problem detail kind of stuff, right? But we can also use our API response structure to do it. But I think problem details are good. We can do these things as well. So this is problem details are these errors spell well. So we need to make sure we pass in. This is not what am I doing? The errors are not used. Right? We can use our if we pass in these errors to this thing, it's not gonna work, right? We cannot pass into this because this basically trying to accept. If we use the problem DTO issue context, we're gonna be in trouble. Right. So what I want to do is that I'm going to have this. Let's say in this case we want to have response here, right? And then I want to go and say API response, which is our API response that we created. Oh god. So we're gonna say API response, which means that we need to bring our API response using here from the DTOs, right? And then the API response are going to take an object, right? An object, and we already have a method called fail. So when there's something fail in there, so we have fail response, and fail response, we can then have fail response like this. In here, what I want to do is that I want to have this, but before then I want to also have the status code, which means that when this status code, let's go status code, and I want to have something like status code, okay, like this, and this is supposed to work. Yeah, this will work instead of problem details. The issue is that anytime we're gonna put this into our program.cs, so whenever we are doing validation, so now the validations, are going to depend on this guy. Because of what? Because of this iValidator we are calling in here. So we are going to do what we call the summary scan, right? So we find any validation. So anytime there's going to be a create book, the ASP.NET Core will make the create book validation ready for us, right? So this filter, that is what it's going to target right here. And then program.cs, we'll go into the program.cs when we're done with the services, right? So at this point, what we want to do is to create our service, right? To go ahead and create our service. So let's go here, and then we start with the our outer service here. So now what left for us to create is our book service and controllers, right? So I will explain controllers in a minute, and how we're going to use our API response in the controllers. So to make this good, let's go and start implementing the services, right? So what I want to do is that we already have this. So the next thing we need to do is bring our database. Remember, what the service is going to do is that it's going to talk to our database. We have our business logic, and then it's talking to our database. So it's going to say read only right here, and we say application. So we're going to create application DbContext, which is our context that we created, and then we can do. So the moment we have this, going to have a constructor right here, right? And this one is that we first of all want to bring get book at the point. And mostly, I would like to arrange the gets at the top, or any of them. I mean, it just by kind of, and then let me bring the search. Let me implement these two guys first. So we are looking at this logic right here. So how do we go with this, right? First of all, we're gonna make this async because we are getting something from the database, and it's supposed to be kind of asynchronous stuff, right? So let me do this so that we all see what we are doing. Okay, good. So Copilot is gonna give us a wrong code, which we don't want to take right here, right? But before we do this, I'm going to create a lot of some kind of private classes, right? So one thing that we're going to do in your .NET application is that you're going to have private classes, right? That's something for you, so that you don't put everything in here. So I can have this kind of what we call regions right here, and I'm going to say private, right? So these are private method, and then we're going to have private method, and then we're gonna go inside. We create private, and then this private, I'm gonna make it status, and I'm gonna give iQueryable. So I have a video in this YouTube channel where I was talking about iQueryable and then iNumerable, right? iQueryable and iNumerable. So here, what do we want to query is that I want to query the author right here. So not just the author, but this author right here. And then I'm gonna go and say that apply search, right? Copilot apply search. So apply search is whenever we are getting some listings from the database, we can then apply search to it, right? And then this method accept iQueryable and all that. But what the Copilot is doing is that, okay, these are the two methods I'm going to create. The Copilot is doing it well, but let's do the apply search well. So we check if the search item, I'm not going to go with this logic. It's kind of, so if, right, if the string right here, it's not easy to use. I mean, this Copilot thing, right? Search item, right? We just have to return the query. So I want to write a better code right here, but this. We need to close this guy. That's why this thing is not coming in. And then we need to be sure we have this as well. So return query. So we return this query, and then we say var term is called to search item to the lower, and then we return is queryable where, let's see, right? So you can search. So you apply a search. So this, you can search by the username where is contained the term, right? Biography. So you can basically do biography. So if you have the biography, you can do that, and then you can do the search as well, right? So basically that is what we're gonna do. And we probably want to do this, and this is saying that okay, we need to change this and make it is empty or white space. Right, so what is this? Okay, so true if the value is num. Okay, query string. So we can say, because the search can be null, right? User can decide not to have a search, right? So because you are not, you can, so we can make this an optional of not to be. So now if we do this to this, okay, biography, all that, right? So this warning that we are getting in here is null or white space, and then we pass in the search to it, right? But we will take this slide. So we want to change this, not apply filtering, but I'm going to say apply sorting, right? We want to sort these things, guys. And these guys, the perimeter way, we have this iQueryable. We do not want to implement this right now, right? All we want to do is that apply sorts have this query, which is good. We do not. So the query here, I want to do this. So what I'm going to do is that with this query, we're going to have a string here, because the sorting can be also be null, and I'm going to say sort by, right? And then I'm going to have this boolean right here, see that descending, right? So you can have this descending right here. Okay, so here we say return sort by. Here the sort by should have option of sort by, yeah, but I do not want to do this, right? And then when you do that, I want to switch here, and I want to have this guy up. What we want to do is that we want to have the descending, right? Else we want to have these guys up. Okay, good. So this is, we can then sort by name. So the author name can be, we want to sort by the author name right here, right? So we probably want to sort by the author name, and we want to also apply search. So now if we are getting these guys up, we then can apply all these things here, where we're going to say that var query. Okay, Copilot is going to do this in the first step. Good for us. So we can say that is there any way we can turn Copilot off, because it's making our work more kind of difficult, right? And then we're going to say that we have context, and then we have authors right here, right? So when we get the authors, what do? We say that, hey, include the books, because we want to include books right here. And then we want to make this as queryable, right? We want to make this as queryable, so that Yeah. So when we say, whenever you meet what we call iQueryable, iNumerable in ASP.NET, what is happening is that queryable is basically apply certain things in the database level. So all these things we are doing here, the filtering, the sorting, is going to apply it based on the database level. So most cases is fast. But when you do the iNumerable, it means that it will put the data before it will apply all the logic you want to do inside, right? Now we want to go and say var, we want to say that, hey, we get a query, right? So when we get a query, the first thing is that we probably want to apply the sorting to it. Remember, now we are pulling books, right? We get the authors and we add books. So now let's say this is coming from the database, and it's supposed to be iQueryable because we're going to apply this private classes logic to it. So now when you get this query, we want to say that, hey, apply this query, and then we have this query parameter here, and then with the search item. So if you are searching, you can do that. And then we're going to have this where we also apply the sorting to this guy, right? When we get them now, so it means that now we can apply all these things to this. All right, so now this logic we have here, it means that anytime we are trying to apply our sorting, which we have already implemented them here as a private class, is going to work for us, right? So one thing that you may notice is that we are doing a private class so that we won't have everything being put in here, which is making it, right? So we have this sort by, and then we say query parameter here, sort descending, right? Which already have these guys, right? So we going to go into this, and we're going to say var total count, and then count async. Where are we getting the count async from, right? You ask, where are we getting the count async from? This is a method right here which executes a queryable method, right? This executes a queryable method. So it's probably going to give us, now all we are going to do, we want to have a total count, right? So all the search we apply, or what we are getting from the database, how many items or how many data are we pulling right now? So this is basically going to have us. So then when we get this times, we're going to say that author right here. So we're going to have this authors right here, and then we're going to have these guys. Yes, so Copilot is doing it right for us. So now this is basically, we have the total count, right? Let's make this so that you understand. We have this here. We have our query. This is where we do the pagination, right? So this is how you do pagination. We skip, we take, so you can go to page 1, page 2. So mostly when you see response, that's how basically it look like. So we also gonna have return authors, right? So I'm gonna say return author right here, and then this is gonna be, we're gonna do this now. Our first to pagination response. Remember, we did mapping with pagination response. So now everything we are going to get here, right, is going to be in this pagination response. So we're gonna have this a guy here, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna say that, hey, this a 2, we already so we already have this, and then we're gonna have a, and so to DTO, right? To DTO, and then we have the query and page number. We're gonna have the page size, and we're gonna have the total count, right? And then when it happens like that, we're gonna hit this guy up. We are done with whenever we want to get authors. And take note of this, when we get to book, it's going to be the same as well, because book can also apply a certain kind of things to it. And then remember, we have the private classes ready, which make our next step, which is the search, more easier to implement, right? So now what we are doing is that, hey, we have already applied all the search filtering and everything. We get a total count, which we are adding into the response that is going to come in. We are doing our pagination here, by default, we're gonna have page one coming in. When we get this, we want to have this. Everything should come in this format, right? Pagination response, right? Which is this we created a DTO, right? And we remember we are saying that hey to pagination response, right? And this is a mapping extension we did, right? So that is making it easier for us to do this and not going to say create a new stuff. Let's also go ahead and create this guy up right here. What I'm gonna do is very simple. It's gonna Copilot. Let's see, Copilot. Yeah, Copilot got it right. Copilot got it right because it's the same as the one we are doing, but Copilot is wrong. Okay, good. So at the point, Copilot is we need to apply search, but when you apply search, you can also when you apply search, you can also apply sorting to it, and then by default, you can say name. And then we can see false. Right. So when we get this, I'm trying to save. When we get this, this is right. So what we want to search, the search item, we take the page number. The search item, what are you going to search for? Right. And we already have a private class that's basically, let's zoom it. We already have a private class that helps us with the search. Right, so we just call that one in here. We call the sorting in here, and this one to the same. We have the total count, and as we did for the other one, right? But here we're gonna do another search when the total count, because if you search and there is no book, we need to give you an error. Not error, right, but exception, right? So if the total count. If the total count is basically equal to 0, so after you do your own search, if the total count is equal to 0, what do I want to do is I want to throw in an exception, and an exception we're going to have our not found exception, right? So we're going to have not found not found exception. We created not found exception, and I don't know why it's not coming here. So we created this exception. Where is it? We created this exception, not found exception. So we can say, hey, the no author found matching this. We can say this guy. So here, what I can do is that I can do this $sign here, so that in here we're gonna show whatever the user search, right? Okay, let's put this one as well. Okay, good. So this is also search. Now I'm going to do get by ID, which is gonna be easy for us. We just want to get by ID, so let's make this async as well. And what we know to do is that we're gonna say var author get, yeah. So we're gonna get this author right here, and then we go to the database and say, hey, include books. And that is one thing you need to do. Always make sure that you are including the books. And first default, it means that we want to search for what match, this one, and then we want to throw not found exception to you, right? And if everything go, we just return this into the DTO. So basically this is what we want to do as well. Now we are in the point where we need to create, and because we have already done the mapping, the create is also going to be kind of easy. So I'm going to say that async, and we're going to say var author here. We want to create author. So you see what Copilot is doing initially. If without our mapping extension, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to create a new instance of the book entity, which is bad design, right? So what you want to do is that you want to have this guy, you want to take this one out, right? All we are doing is to take this guy out. All right, so all we are doing is to take this guy out. So what we are going to do is that we going to say that, hey, this guy, what we want to do is that we're going to say create, right, book DTO, and then into our entity. You remember we have an entity, which is mean that it's the create DTO, right? So create book DTO, this is it. So all these things are going to be done for us manual, automatically, so that we are not going to repeat ourselves here. So when we get this, at this point, Copilot can get it. We just map it and return it to you, right? And we want to do updates before I go to other ones. So because we are also, how we are doing update, mostly create is similar to update, right? It's kind of having something in common, but here we can do the same, right? We check for the ID if it already exists. We don't want to do all these things, but this is good. So we already have update map, right? So we already do all this check, like how we're gonna get by ID, if not we through an exception, right? And then what we're gonna do is that we can say alter right here, because here we need to, first of all, this alter we created here. Now we need to do this to update DTO, and then we pass in what we want to update, and then we save the changes, and then we return. This is going to be easy. So you can see that with the extensions, it's making things kind of easy for us to go fast. So now we left with just delete, right? So with the delete, it's going to be easy, right? It's gonna be easy for us. The Copilot is making it also good for us. Let's see if it's good, right? Let's see if it's correct. We find by ID, but I don't want to use this format, right? Because I want to write this var alter right here, and then we see that it's called to await, and then we want to go to our DbContext here. We want to get alter right here. We do not want to use this Copilot. We don't want to use this instead. So here, so you see, I will find a way to disable Copilot for all these things. Is making an unnecessary stuff here. So we're gonna say find async, and we pass in the ID. Yeah, this is the correct one we want to use. Okay, so now we have everything in here. So this is basically in the modern way, with kind of a best performance way of adding search, adding sort, kind of sorting and everything. So we can add filters as well, but we don't have filters here. And if you are to add filters, it's going to be the same as well, right? Like what we have in our private classes and all that. Now the next step for us is to go and do our book, because how we did the alter is going to be the same. Just most of the concepts are going to be the same for how we are going to do our book, but the book are going to have filters and everything. So in the book, I'm going to show you how to do filters. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to create our private classes as we did for the other one. So we're going to have this region, and then we say private method, and then we end the regions, right? So we're going to have private classes created, and it's going to be the same as the one we did, right? So you see that once what is going to be new here is the sorting, how we're going to add it, and we are adding filtering as well. Okay, so let's first of all, we're going to create the method that will help us to search for book, right? So I'm going to have a private static kind of, it's trying to do this, right? But apply Copilot will get all of them wrong. We probably will fix them, right? So let's see, apply filters, and then I think it will be able to apply pagination, which we don't want, right? We already have, so we're gonna say private class, private static, apply search, right? Okay, so let's see what is happening here. Let's start with this. I know Copilot might do it wrong. We're gonna do it right. So we have this search here, which is queryable, right? And then we apply search. We have this, and then okay, good. So this is good. If it is this way, if it is not, no, we just return this guy. So and where, so we do not want to do this guy. Remember our first one, we did this bottom before we say return these guys. Okay, so this is not something. It's the same one that we did for the other one, right? And apply filters here is getting it kind of wrong, right? But we gotta fix that. So it has this one, book query. We have, remember we already have book. We have book query perimeters, right? So that is what we want to use. We want to use the book perimeters, right? So we're going to go here, and what we want to do is that if this is how you do it. If this is not, I don't know how we should put this one on. So if perimeter right here, right? If perimeter dot, no, okay, we make it query. We say query perimeter here. If it's this, I think we need to have the author ID has value right here. So if somebody provide an author ID, right, we gonna go ahead and then we have our query. And then what the query is gonna go is that it's gonna go to, it's called to where query where, right, the ID. This is going to be very simple, where we can say this is going to be book. Yeah, this is good, this is correct, this is what we want. So if you pass this guy, we also gonna do the same for publication. So if, because we want to sort by publications, so when you check here, we want to sort by ID and publication. So if this guy, we can copy this guy, right? We can copy this guy up for us to go fast. And all we need to do is that we need to change it. We need to change this right here to we need to change this to publication from, and then we want to go ahead and say has this guy up, and then we do this, and in here publication there, right? So this is it, right? These are the two. Then we want to have publication to we should have this is going to be publication date. Okay, good. So this is basically what we want to sort in, right? So this is what we want to sort in, and it's saying that remove the unused private, apply sorting from it. It's not unused now, don't worry, we'll use it, right? This is basically going to be apply filters, right? Apply filters. So this goes into this. We implement this in the wrong place. This go here. All right. And it takes this. So now with the sorting, what it was having initially was good. We need to remove these guys, right? And we have this string right here. You remember what we did for the other one, right? Sort by, and then we're gonna have this guy called descending, right? Boolean descending. We're gonna have this guy Boolean descending. But Copilot is making our work more difficult. I don't know. It doesn't understand anything right here, but at the point sometimes it gets it right. So we gonna say return sort by. We already remember we probably want to send it to this guy. So the sort by, which we already have it here. Return sort by, right? Which is going to be like this. To lower, we switch, right? Yeah, so this is basically going to be that one. Okay, so this is going to be our sort kind of logic. Copilot was making it hard, so I decided to improve it, right, behind the scene. So basically, this is what we want to sort by publication date, author name, and everything, right? And then we are linking it to author name and everything. So we have this, and this is basically the only change we have in this and the book service is that the book the author service, we're doing only apply sorting, apply search, and everything, but in here we are doing sorting, filtering, and search. So it means that our get is going to be different, right? So let's first of all search for the get book, which is this guy, and bring it at the top. And then we're gonna do the same one where we have the search as next to it. And then we gonna have get by ID next to it. So we're gonna have get by ID next to this. And update to it as well. So update and or update come under get by ID, right? And then we have create. Create come before update. Let's not even look into this. Let's first of all go and have private read only. So you see, first of all, we need to bring our database here. So we're going to say application DbContext, and then we put this as context, and then we do this, right? So now our database is here, the same one, right? The same one as the one we did. But these ones are not having a let's go say public async, right? Public async, because this is this, you see, this was implemented in a certain way. So now we're gonna have a query like the one we did, right? Let's see if Copilot is helping us, because this is going to be the same. We do this and we say iQueryable, and then we say iQueryable. We need to bring entity framework call here, right? So this is the same one we did, right? So we call our private class here, which is the search. So whenever the user is getting the data and they are trying to apply any search in it, we probably will get this, right? So this is kind of a get request to the search, and then we're gonna have the sorting here as well. So let's verify all of them is good. Total count here, we want to get the count, right? It's good. And then it's going to do the pagination here. Here is getting it wrong, because we already have this guy. So when we remember, when we get this, we can call this books, because this is supposed to be books. I'm gonna call these books, and then in here we want to put this into to list, right? So we put this into a list. So don't worry about these ones. These ones are just we are planning the search and the sorting and everything to everything that we are doing. So we first of all make it iQueryable, and then we pass in all these guys to it. The search private class is here, and all these things. Copilot, I think, need to be disabled. We say that return. So when we get this, we already have return, right, book, and then the book is going to be pagination result. Return books, and then in here all we do is that we're going to do pagination response, right? And then inside the pagination response, all we do is that we're going to bring this guy in, and then we say b, right? Let's say b to DTO, right? Good. And then we bring these guys, and then we bring the total count, and then we hit this guy up. We are done. So this is basically the get with all the filtering and everything coming in. So this make it easy for us, right? Now the next thing we will want to do is basically doing the search, and then the search, I mean, it's gonna be the same as we compare to the book, right? So we're gonna have var query. I'm gonna have var query here, book. All these things that Copilot is doing is wrong. It's making the work more difficult. So we want to do this, and then we go to our context. We get the books. When we get the books, we want to include the author as well. So we call it the navigation, what I was explaining. So now when we get books, so when you check here we are doing it even wrong, right? Here we need to check if we get this. We need to do this, and we need to we can make book as we can remove this guy here, right? And then we come in here. So here we don't need to, we have already implemented the author here, and so we get this include guy, and then we say that as iQueryable, right? So we need to bring we need to, what is happening here? Let's write this thing from. So var query, right? So this is going to be query, and then I want to, good, here I'm not gonna do no tracking. I'm gonna do as queryable. Good. This is how it's supposed to be. So now this is supposed to be the same as well, right? As not as queryable, right? Okay, so when we get this guy, is the same thing we want to apply. We want to apply these guys inside query here. We need to have the query perimeter here. Which one is this? This is wrong. So let's go to the interface. Search is having a wrong because if you want to search okay, search is good. We can when we get this right, we are only going to apply the search here. Let's see. So search is going to go to apply. I don't know how to disable this Copilot. Apply apply search, right? And it's gonna take this guy up. So apply search would do this, and then we can inside after the search we can apply sorting to this guy. Yes. And then here we're gonna do our total count as we always do, right? We have the total count, and then we can do the same if the total count is 0 right here. We want to throw in exception of this guy to make not to stick with Copilot, which doesn't understand what we are doing right now. We can say this no matchbook found right here. We probably would like to bring in the search term that the user put in, right? So the search term that the user put inside will come here, and if we can make here some kind of this to make it something like this. And when we get this, we're going to say var book, right? Query skip, yeah, good. And then we return the book, right, to pagination response. Yeah, so pagination response, and then you're gonna have all these guys in. Good, now it's getting it. So this is what we want to do. So now we can basically apply search to book as well. So we want to go and do get by ID. Where is get by ID? We should have get by ID, which is here. We're gonna make this a public async. So public async, we want to get by ID. Copilot is doing wrong thing for us. So get by ID is basically, this is it. We want to throw in the exception notes here instead, but it should, sometimes we want to throw this exception here. We want to throw, if this is not found, we're gonna throw this guy, and if not, we will return the book to the book DTO, right? So we are getting this error because this should be like this. Okay, good. So now get by ID is working fine, right? We can get the book by ID. I mean, simple as that. So we need to do the next one is create, and because we have all these guys sync with the extension method, it becomes easy for us to work around these guys. So as I said, without the extension method, this is how we're going to do it, right? This is how we're going to basically do it. But here, one thing is that when we're creating an alter, we create alters before we create book. So when you are creating an alter, we don't want you to make any unnecessary kind of requests. So the first we're gonna do is that we're gonna check indeed if this alter exists, right? If indeed there is this alter exists before we will go ahead and implement anything. So one thing that I would do is that I'm gonna say that var, we check for this, we're gonna go this exist alter, right? So we find this find by ID, or we can say that yeah, this is gonna be wrong. Oh, just Copilot. So we probably don't want to do this, right? we want to go ahead and say any then we pass in the ID. So we want to check for the existing authors, right? So author what is this? Yeah, we threw this an error. So the author with the ID is not found, right? So when with the author found, we're going to say var book, right? And then we're going to say create book to entity, right? So we create book to entity, and then we save, and then there is something we need to do, right? So when we are adding it in here, because it has a reference, right, to the author, we probably would like to do author, and then we go to the context, and what we want to do is that entity framework has something called entry. We say that entry, and then there is a root reference, right? And then this is basically it, because author creates books, right? So if you're an author, we create books, and this is helping us to understand the relationship around how we create this thing with .NET and everything. And I hope at this point you are enjoying the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, right? So that we'll be able to give you more in-depth video. This is not you going to generate this with LLMs. We are taking our time here to make sure that you understand the concepts, and when you get this concept, you can use it to build any further application with ESP.NET, right? Or with .NET. Okay, so now let's move forward, right? Let's move forward with this kind of update, and then update is always going to be easy, right? So we say var book, and what it's going to be is that we're going to say that, hey, we first of all, when you are updating, we find the book, right? So if the book exists, we're still going to find this author thing right here, this one. So we probably can make sure that we can make this a private class and use it, right? So we're gonna have a private check for author exist, right? Okay, check for author exist, and then here we're gonna say private class is author exist, right? No. Author exists, so we take in the author ID, right? And then you say ID. So if we take in the ID, you're gonna do something like this, right? Okay, because this is going to be, so you say private async, because we see private async and DbContext, we're gonna get an issue because object reference for non-static website. Task return this guy. It taking this. So taking this guy. Okay, good. So the existence of whenever we are creating, so now instead of this guy, we can call the private method here, call the so we call this guy here, right? So we call this guy here. It's kind of, but it's making the things more good. And here what we do is that we're going to have the update DTO, okay, and then this is the, so we first of all we check if the author exists, and then do this. So if both of them exist, right, we're going to say book to, we don't want to do this, so book, and then map from DTO, update from DTO, and then we're going to pass this guy in, and then when we get this guy, the rest is just to we're gonna do this because the update, and then we save the changes, and then we return to the tool. So basically this is, and you see that I made this private class to put these guys in there so that it's gonna be good for us, right? So it's a boolean, it's either return true or false, and we're gonna do this delete right here. So let's hit this guy up with the, let's say, okay, Copilot is doing it for us. So whenever we are going to delete, we check if not found, if found, we delete it. So at this point, we have been able to implement a lot of things, right? And let's go over before we go into our program.css, and then we're going to end this in our controller, right? We have a global exception, which is, we call it a middleware. It means that all the HTTP requests coming in is gonna hit it because it has the HTTP context, right? And then we have these services that we have implemented, and we are saying that the services contain our business logic, right? So with the combination of database, and you see that we're bringing our database here, and then we have put all of them in here. So it's making it kind of easy for us, right, to have this kind of business rule going into our database, and then also creating all the validation and everything. And we created a validation as well, validation filters, where it means that whenever we're gonna create, we call these filters, and then we're gonna go to the program.cs and do a lot of work in there, and you understand, right? Here, when we started, we said that this is the entry point. All the things that we have been doing, this is the time that we just tell ASP.NET Core that this is what we are using. But before then, let's go ahead and create the controllers, right? Controllers is where we have the endpoint. We're gonna expose a lot of them, right? So I'm going to have this guy called auto controller, right? So that when we come, we just implement the controllers, right? With the endpoint, it's gonna be kind of easy to do that. So we're gonna go ahead and do this, right? So now we have book controller, and then auto controller, right? So let's go ahead and do a lot of work. And this is some kind of we're gonna bring our middleware right here. So remember, we installed Scala, right? Scala was installed, right? And the goal is that is what we're going to use to see what is happening in the interface. As I said, there was an issue with Swagger and everything, right? Yeah, so we first want to, and you can see if we go, these are some kind of the middleware already registered in .NET, and you see these are the ones we're talking about, middlewares. And then we see that the middlewares are globally, right? So whenever the request comes in, it's going to hit it. So map controller, it means that we are going to use controller based approach in this application, because in the ASP in .NET, you are not going to basically use only controller. There is another way of also doing it, right? So which I'm going to do complete course on it with .NET 10, right? Okay, so we're gonna have we're gonna say map Scala reference. And Scala is, we think of Scala if you know about Swagger, right? And if you want to learn more about Scala, they have a great documentation where we can go in here, and we when we do Scala, we can say Scala .NET. Let's add .NET to it, right? Maybe Scala.net or something. And then I think they have this website. Let's check that, right? So they have good website. This has a lot of documentation where it can get you started with Scala, which I will link. I'll add this link in the description, right? So this is great to get started with it. But here, one thing that we need to take note of is that we first need to, so global exceptional handler, right, must be the first in the pipeline. This is a note, right? Whenever you are doing this global exceptional handler, make sure that when it comes to the middleware section, right, which, so in the .NET, the middleware, anything coming down here, we can call it, those things are middlewares, right? It just inject into the pipeline. So it should be first. So here, we're going to do this into the app dot global. So the name that we gave, we're going to say that use exceptional handler, right? And we're going to tell ASP.NET Code that, hey, we have these exceptions, right? So make sure to always check out for these ones, right? So use this exceptional handler right here, and which we're going to basically add them as well. Okay, now there is one thing we need to do. We need to make sure we want to apply migrations. So apply migrations and see data, right? Apply migrations, apply migrations, and then seed data, because we already have those seed data, right? And then we want to dispose, because when we are done, we want to dispose. So we're going to use this using, right? This is going to work, right? And we're going to bring this guy up, and this migrates. We need to use the framework call. If we want to, there is this something we can ensure creates, will create this, and it basically creates everything. We don't need to do a migration and everything. But in this case, I want to apply migration manually. So it's a migrate, so that when we do the migration, the applying of the migration is going to be done for us kind of automatically. So we don't need to do this. And I think these are so var context, we probably would like to have this. Let me go and say var, I'm going to make this context. Let's make it better. Go pilot. And then we have the service provider right here. We get the require service, right? And then if this is going to be like this, I'm going to make this a width, and then so that we get this async. And then I'm going to bring the database seeder right here. Okay, so this is more cleaner, right? We have this database seeder. Let's use that, so that whenever we do that, this is what we need, right? Copilot got it wrong, but it's good now. So this is going to help us to when we do the migration, automatically it's going to apply there what we have, right, in there. So now let's go top here, which we are moving from the migration. So we register the application DbContext, right? Register the application DbContext. We are using SQLite, so it's gonna be we are using SQLite. So if we are using sort of so this is an SQLite, we add this and then we add our application. This, we are telling ASP.NET Core ASP that, hey, this is what we want to do, right? This is what we want to add, right? So take this DbContext and add it for us. So we're gonna add this, the default connection string here in our application.json, right? So I'm gonna bring this application, the JSON here, this JSON. We're gonna add, so it's like most cases that's what we're gonna do. So default connection string right here, that we are calling in the program.cs, we are putting it here, which is SQLite. If it's SQL Server and other stuff, what you're basically going to do is that you're going to have a connection string and everything, right? Which is what you're going to bring in here. So in this case, we are using the SQL Lite here and apply configuration. This will help us to get that connection string and one thing. Now, one thing we need to register the fluent validation, right? The fluent validation, right? With your summary, right? So one thing about the alternate is that anytime you see here, we probably will add program. Let me see if what I'm thinking is gonna work. Yeah. So in .NET, anytime you see this kind of anything that goes to a summary, right, it means that it's going to do some kind of scan, right, to find what you want, what you need, right? So this is something you probably will keep it in mind. It's more context to it, but having this in mind like that is going to help. And then we need to go, as we are telling the middleware, the pipeline, that there's going to be global exception handler. In here with a service, we need to tell which service is going to use, right? And this is the same pattern. Add controllers here is that we see map controllers is here and add controllers is also here, right? And we have add OpenAI here, and then we also have app. So we add this into this. So mostly follow the same pattern. So we're going to say register global exceptional handler, because we want to just our global exceptional handlers, right? And all we want to do is that we want to go builder.service add exception. We're going to have this add exceptional handler. We add our global exceptional handler, and there with this thing we will use in program details, right, which we need to basically also bring that guy here, and then we're going to say add program detail. Right, so we're going to say that I'm going to add program details, and then we got this guy up, and we are going to import our global exceptional handler coming in. So now we have been doing a lot, right? And then inside the controller, with this guy up, add a controller. We probably are going to say that we're going to have options, and we add our filters in there. So add a validation filter which we created. So that's this happens the controller level, right? Okay, good. So now this we have added this. We have added this. It's going to help us for .NET to detect our validation by default, right? Okay, so now what I'm gonna do next is that we created services, right? We need to register those services as well. So we say that registered application services, right? Registered application service. So we're going to say builder.service, and there is this kind of service lifetime in ASP.NET Core where you add it as scope, right? We're going to add this as scope. And there was a video here in my YouTube channel where I was explaining the difference between all these lifetimes and all that. So you can go and watch and understand what we are doing. Why are we using the scope, right? Okay. So now we have everything set up, right? In the program.cs right here. So the next thing is that we move to controller, right? And that is where we do the final part of it. And I'm going to start with the author controller right here, where we're going to do that. So in .NET, before I do that, I need to annotate this, that this is an API controller. And then we're going to have the route as an API. So it's going to be like / the API controller, which we're going to be the authors, right? And then I can sometimes, maybe I can say produce, because I'm kind of JSON, right? I'm going to show you why I'm doing this, right? And what we need to do, one reason why we created so when you check one thing about this dependency injection thing is that let's go to the author service. Right? We created this interface, and this interface is the interface that we used to create a service. So when you go to the author service here, you see that we just injected this here and we were using it, right? Now, one thing that we need to do is that we need to bring those guys here, right? So we're going to say private read only, and then we bring it here. So the moment we bring this guy here, we have access to the service logic, which we're going to use here. And then in controller, this is very simple. We have the HTTP get, HTTP post, and everything. So I'm in .NET, I'm going to bring all these things here. This is very easy to do because the most important part is what we have done, right? So I have already prepared all the controllers, right, so that we go fast, but I'm going to explain everything to you, right? So first of all, we need to have a get, right? So anytime we want to get authors right here, and this is kind of because this need to annotate, we are getting out because this needs to be controller based, right? Okay. So very, very easy. Mostly we are telling you some kind of the response. These are the produce response. So that mostly these things helps for the front end and everything, right? So that you, when you open this in Scala, you see how it's going to look like, right? And then what we are doing is that it's returning our API response, right? And then the pagination response, all these things. So anytime we do this, we give the pagination, our API response. So it means that our results are going to come in this format, right? It's going to come in this format. So basically that is one thing that you need to take note of. It's going to come with a structure. So you may have your own API response structure that you go by, right? So that is one thing, right? So always there is a structure that you go with, and it depends on what you are working on. So this is get all. We are getting authors, right? And this will pull all the authors for us. So the sense we understand that this is get. So if you are posting, the only thing we do is that post and everything. And this produce response, as I said, we are just, it's not doing any logic. The logic is happening here where we get this author right here. We call the service, right? And then we say, hey, get this we have already implemented get author. We pass in the parameter here because you can do the parameter here, and then we give you the response, right? This is kind of easy because all the logic and everything is happening in the service level. So if you understand this, I'm going to bring all the controller endpoint because it's going to follow the same process. We don't need to write all these things from scratch and everything, right? So there is this kind of HTTP error. Okay. So I'm gonna bring everything, right? I have prepared all the controllers so that we move fast to test this thing and see how it look like, right? Okay. So let me explain all the controller that I've prepared here. So this is get. And then this is basically we go and use the service we created, right? All the logic. So everything is going to come from here. This. And through the interface, and this is the concept of dependency. So you see that this is being referenced in the 4 places. So anytime we get access to this, we get access to the logic because this implement the logic as well, right? And that is the beauty of dependency ingestion and everything. So we have the controller, we get, and the search, we annotate it. We also get, but we are saying that, hey, we are annotate this with search, right? And then we have get by ID. And one thing in .NET is that you can specify the type of the ID that you're expecting to get, which is this case get ID, get a GUI ID, right? Not hint ID. And all of them are following the same pattern. You just have this, and then you get it, and we pass in the ID because this is coming from the service, right? And the same thing. And as I said, all this produce response are just trying to annotate this. It's not, but in the best practice, that's what I'm doing it. When you are working with .NET application, try most cases use the produce response so that it helps those who are going to consume the application as well. Let's do the book controller at this point as well, which is we have already spent a lot of time, right? And I think you understand, if you're watching this video at this point, you understand all the core concept right now. What matters right now is the controller is the same. So we're gonna bring the controller here as well. I've already prepared so that we move fast right here. And then this is the same as the book, right? We bring in the book interface. Well, this is the same as the author here. We bring this, when then with this one we bring this guy in, right? So this is kind of it. And then we say that get, and then it gets all the same thing, get book. We call that method in the service. That's just what we have in the interfaces, right? And then you do that, and then you do the search, and then you do the get by ID and everything. So the controller, we think of this is where the user, whatever the user is going to do, will pass for the first time, right? So whatever the user is going to do, going to come into the controller before it then gets to wherever we want to go to the service. So you see that gets to the controller, go to the service, because the service is what we are using here. So the controller is trying to expose, because this is where the HTTP thing happens. They're helping us to do the HTTP stuff. And then under the hood, the service take the logic. And then when it takes it, it goes into the database. So what we are saying that our validator filter that we have already set in, we're hitting the controller level, right? To check what the user is going to put in is correct before you even go to the service, right? And the global exception handler is going to do the same as well. So let's go into this. Now let's do this kind of, if everything is good, let's do migration. So you see .NET EF, right? Migration. So we can say this is going to be initial migration. No, we need to seed into this project, right? And then we're gonna do the migration. So we are performing a migration, right? We're gonna create a migration. This is gonna create in the application. If everything built successful, it's gonna, so first of all, it's gonna build it. When it's done, it create the migration. And then when it create the migration, forget about this error warning. And when you create the migration, all we need is that it's create the migration. So we go to our application, and somewhere we didn't specify where the migration is supposed to go. So when we go here, we should be able to see migrations. Which is it? This is the migration. So you can see this is what we're going to have in the database. When we started, I was saying that what EF core, or we can say entity framework core, is doing is that it's helping you to not to write a lot of SQL scripts yourself. So it's kind of a wrapper. It's doing all the heavy lifting, right, for you under the hood. So all the SQL script and everything. So this migration that we have created, you see that it has a property of ID and everything, and under the hood, this is going to generate raw SQL stuff, right? So you can see it's calling this create table, and it's saying all this foreign key and everything. And we wrote this in C# format, but now you see what we are having here, which is kind of amazing and all that, right? So now it's the interesting part is that we're gonna test this. So we're gonna hit the guy, and I say we're gonna run this. And when we run, the migration is gonna be applied automatically. So we don't need to apply it because we were using apply migration sync, right? So you see the migration is applied. And now we can go to this guy here, and then we're gonna do /scalar, right? So you see this is a scalar, guys. So we can even copy their name like that. So when you go to /scalar, we should see an interface. Very, very, very nice interface. Beautiful interface. This is scalar, right? And one thing is that the data that we put in was already seeded, right? So you can see it was seed, right? We have the data already seeding. So when we go get book, we should be able to get something, right? So first of all, well, let's start with the authors right here. We want to try get authors. Let's see, right? It's giving us success message, right? And you see Scalar is very nice, and it's giving us author right here. We have this Martin guy here. These are the seed one that we see, and this is the pagination, page number, page size, total count, and then we have the total page one. This is next one. So this is the pagination what we did, right? Yeah. So let's try the search. Let's search for Evans. Let's search for Evans, and so we can create other one as well. This one is the one that we see so that we get something to test. Let's see the search. So Scalar is giving us, this is our search item right here. We hit this, so we are expecting to have Evans only. So you see that now we have the count as 1, right? So we got Evans only. We got Evans only, right? So we search. We got Evans only. So if we delete this, we got this. We're gonna get 3, right? The total count is going to be 3. So now let's search for clean code only. So we're gonna search for clean code, and this is going to be interesting, right? We're gonna search for. So I'm testing the search. Where is the search? Search item. I deleted it. Let me refresh. It's gonna come. Okay, so we're gonna do the search. We are gonna search for clean code already, and then you see we get 1. So it means that our search is working, right? Our search is working. So for if we close this guy up, we hit the information. We got all of them, right? We got all of them, and then when we choose this to true, the ascending is gonna change how the information is being arranged. So when I do that, you basically see how it's gonna do that, right? So this is good. This is great, right? This is great. So that is it. We can also get by ID. Let's copy and get by ID. So we get by ID right here. So we put in the ID here, and then we get this guy, right? And then there is an endpoint we created for search, right? So search specifically, you can search. So if I want to search here, I'm gonna put in the search item right here. It means that this endpoint, if I go here, we remember we're having an error. The name search field is required. The name search field is required. What is happening? Let's go to the code. The name search field is required. Right, so you cannot just go there and then put anything in it. The filters are working, right? We need to provide the search. We need to provide the search. So let's put Evans inside, and then Evans is showing that. You see how fast everything was executed, right? So this is basically it. If we want, we can create a new book. If we want, we can create a new book. Author here, and I'm going to call it Clifford, right? Let's say if I'm not passing anything, let's say biography is required because I'm posting thing, right? So biography and book is required. And where is this coming from? It's coming from our filters, right? So this is coming from the filter right here. We can go to the validators, and then we anytime we want to create, name is required, biography is required, and this is where everything is coming from, right? So we need to post it. So I can say Clifford, and then I'm going to say that, hey, I'm Clifford, right? Right here. So I'm going to say I'm Clifford here. So this is it, and we will be able to create it, and you see that we don't have any book yet, right? So the response that came in, so I can now go and search for name Clifford, right? I can now go and search for Clifford. So it means that all our search is working, and then you can take this and extend it to anything that you basically want, right? So we're going to search for Clifford, and then Clifford is, hey, I'm Clifford, and it's coming in. And then we can get book as well. So get all book here from Scalar. Very, very nice, beautiful interface. So this is book. We can search for book as well. We can search for clean architect, right? If the search is working, we have only one book right here. And then we can also do by the author ID right here. So I don't think I have, let's get some of the authors right here and then bring the ID. So let's use the ID to test. So it means that all the thing that we implemented, all of them is working. Right, so we're gonna get this guy, and then there is a perimeter here where we can put in here, and then we get this guy only clean architect only right here. So this is great, right? And it means that all our filtering and everything is working. So we can create book as well. If you want to create book, you put the book, and then you put the author ID and everything. So this is how we basically create application, and then you can, the code is available on GitHub. Pick it, play around it. And thank you so much for watching this video. This is a complete .NET 10 crash course, and this was not just a crash course, right? We have learned a lot. We have taken our time to deep dive most of the .NET concept, and take this concept, you'll be able to build any modern kind of .NET API. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and there's all available link in the description. Take it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for being part of the Cliff Tech family.